Okay, so today we're playing Mono Black Palantir. Now this deck is was originally conceived as a response to the banning of the One Ring, which seems inevitable. When trying to find something to take the One Ring spot in the deck, what I have tried working with my friend Julian on this. So is Palantir of Orthanc. Now Palantir basically at your end step, you scry two, and then your opponent can decide to either have you draw a card or have you mill a number of cards equal to the number of counters on Palantir. And if they choose to have you mill the cards, they'll take damage equal to the total mana cost of the cards milled. It's a fun little card. So the rest of the deck is essentially a mono black deck with a very small amount of green splash. So we have Dothy for graveyard hate, but also sometimes you can steal a big Eldrazi monster and use it against your opponent, which is always very fun. And that's actually one of the strategies that won Rakdos mid range the Modern Championship back in 23. I have Huskburster Swarm, which is not a very common card, but this card is a card that has a very high mana cost. So if this ends up being milled by your opponent with Palantir, they'll take 8 damage from it. Otherwise, it actually has a pretty cool effect, which you don't see too often, which is that both creatures in your exile and your graveyard, if the number of creatures in your exile and your graveyard, it reduces the amount to cast Husk Buddy by those number of creatures. It's a 6/6 menace, death touch. Graveyard hate, your typical graveyard hate does not work on it because it includes those exiled cards. Typically not casting this very often. Anytime I see it, when I scry with the Palantir trigger, I will almost always put that on top and hope the opponent mills. So Orcish Bowmasters for sniping weenies and also draw hate. Shouldered is a core of this deck. She's just a problem you got to deal with. Also some draw hate there and life gain for you. Torok, which is nice against the number of white cards in the format right now. Also, its ability allows has your opponent discard 2 cards at random, which is nice for not only disrupting their hand, but at the same time, if you have Dothy on the field, you might be able to steal a big guy or something like that. Troll, usually, or I used to run with just 2 of these guys, primarily used for swamp cycling, but it's a 6-drop, and that's another one of those cards that can be milled for 6 damage. So this one thing about using Palantir is I've added some of these higher cost cards. Very rarely do I cast Troll, but occasionally it happens. Thoughtseize, classic Witherbloom command is my splash screen. I like this because it's emergency life gain if you need it. It's a little bit of burn damage. I've won games by doing the target opponent loses 2 life ability. It returns a land from the graveyard, which has been probably the most utilized ability here that I've personally done. It can destroy cheap artifacts, and it can occasionally kill a meanie as well. Cling to Dust for draw, and also it's recursive, so you can cast it from your graveyard with Escape. It's very nice. If you have Shouldered on the battlefield, then it's emergency life gain and draw at the same time. But even without Shouldered, you can get 3 life from it. Fatal Push, Shouldered's Edict I like a lot, especially for taking out Planeswalkers. And it's not targeting anything. So anything that would prevent you from targeting an opponent's creature, they sacrifice it. So that's really nice. Especially since there's this new Seven Sires card that has Ward a million. And then Victim of Night, just another removal card. Then I have the 4 Palantirs. The land base is very mono black. It does have Underground Mortuary, which is Cottage's MVP occasionally. It allows me to put a creature on top of my deck, and there's a few cards that allow me to draw here. Palantir is one of them. Cling to Dust. Occasionally, you can line up a Witch's Cottage right before you draw, and you can decide what card you're getting next. Mortuary. I already covered Mortuary. Lockthwain is another card that we can use to draw cards. In the sideboard, I have Break the Ice and Damping Spheres for anti-Eldrazi, and Damping Sphere also for anti-Storm. For Phyrexian Crusader, just to add a little bit more white and red protection. Pick Your Poison is nice, especially with Oculus right now, because you can typically, or a lot of the time, you could have them sacrifice their Oculus because it has flying, but also removes artifacts and enchantments, which is just lovely. Relic I'm enjoying as the Graveyard Hate quite a bit. And if you relic your own graveyard, remember that the creatures will move to exile, which means you can still decrease your casting cast for Huskburster and extra Torox for good measure. So basically, this deck is one that will sometimes feel a little bit slow, not all the time, but will sometimes feel a little bit slow at the beginning of a match, but will typically stabilize between turns 4 and 7. And then you can really hang on with this deck quite a bit as long as you get that far. All right, so let's see what we're playing today. One against Boros Burn, or not Boros Burn. What did I win against? It was Boros Energy. Lost against a Mardu Sacrifice deck, and yesterday, due to my own mistake, I lost against the Eldrazi deck. And it was an Eldrazi ramp deck. So we'll see how today goes. Wonder what we're playing. Typically I have pretty good luck against Eldrazi decks. Here we go. Let me do this. Hold on, I'm trying to adjust my screen here and having difficulties. All right, we're just gonna have to roll like this. I will be on the play. Sorry, opponent, for taking so long. So we have Voidwalker, Fatal Push here. We have some lands to use. 2 potential tap lands and a Catacomb. So I like the early pressure with Dothy quite a bit, and I like being able to remove something right away. I think this is an okay hand. All right, so I kind of want to keep my Catacombs for later, just in case I need to Fatal Push something. So I think what I'm going to do is just Overgrown Tomb, get that on the battlefield, and pass the turn. That way we'll have a little bit of green in case we do draw a Witherbloom early. Urza Saga, okay. And Amulet, oh, wonderful, an Amulet deck. Love those. So hoping that we do draw ourselves a Witherbloom as soon as possible. Yeah, that kind of sucks. I really don't like playing against Amulet decks. They're just too varied. They're so complex. Awesome. Great start. Well, they are loading up the Dothy Exile already. Unfortunately, not too often are there opportunities outside of Titan to use Dothy's abilities. The worst part about Amulet decks is that the turns take so long. Right, okay. All right. Sometimes I feel like just going to make a sandwich while they're taking their turn. All right, so we need to kill this Dryad. And we will. We're going to go ahead and push it right now. I would have liked to have casted Palantir. Unfortunately, I don't really think that was the best move because we need to prevent them from putting out lands as much as we can. So I attack with Dolphy for now, and we will continue. And I'm just going to pass the rest of the turn here. There it is. Three amulets. Engineered explosives would be pretty nice to have right now. This is insane. Sometimes I like to just let them play out. Yeah, I think a lot of people will concede a match if it gets too out of hand. But sometimes I just know their turns can last so long that I'll just see if they can run out their own clock, especially in a league match. So Cultivator Colossus equal to the number of lands they control. When enters, you can put a land from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. Draw a card, repeat. They have a ring now, lovely, and also Primeval Titan. When it enters or attacks, you may search your library for up to 2 lands, put them on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. See, this is turn 3. They've got a ring, 2 Titans, and a Cultivator Colossus. See, this is how Amulet just gets way out of hand too quickly. Killing Dryad really didn't help at all. Wow, okay, so they made 2 of their Titans hasty. And their Cultivator Colossus, they're going to have a turn 3 win here. That's insane. If anybody has ideas of like what can you do to prevent this from happening, I don't quite understand. And if you're when you're playing a mono black deck in the current meta, How can you stop this from occurring? This would be good feedback. Because I might just not be knowledgeable enough. Here we go. Let's go to the sideboard and try and figure out if we could do anything to prevent this from happening again. Take your poison, obviously, to be killing an artifact. Break the ice? Would that be helpful? No, I don't think so. Torok to make them discard potentially, and maybe use a Dolthy strategy. Drawing quite a bit. Whether Bloom can kill the artifacts. Fatal Push could be helpful, but I feel like it's a little risky because, I mean, how many? They do have Dryad. I don't think these games are lasting long enough to really get the value out of Huskburster or even Palantir for that matter. I don't know what two cards after this. Maybe Bowmaster. I don't know. Can Bowmaster block? They have Trample. It's tough. All right, I think maybe the best options here are Cling to Dust, maybe? I don't think the extra life gain is going to be super helpful if you're taking hits from their big guys. All right, let's just try Cling to Dust. Let's see where we end up. We don't have the artifact removal that we would need, but I do like having Thoughtseize and then 2 to 3 lands in hand. And Dolthy on field would be nice when we're killing their big guys. So, like, I don't know. I feel okay with this. And we'll Thoughtseize first thing. Hopefully, they don't have 3 amulets in hand. Oh, they only have 1 amulet in hand, which is something. Or sorry, 2 in hand, which is something. All right. Well, that's a thing anyway. That is a thing anyway. What else did they have in hand? So they put down their amulet and a forest. They still have Zusa and the One Ring. So let's save Bowmaster for a minute, and we'll put down a Dolthy. So they're not going to be able to go quite as quickly this time, which I am totally fine with. I think maybe one of the keys to consistently beating this deck is just knowing what each of the lands do. Because, like, just to be honest, I'm not really the most knowledgeable person on all of the lands in the deck. I think we just maybe need to wait here. Did we try and ping him with Bowmaster? Maybe we do, or at least keep those open so that we can victim tonight a big guy if they add one. I'm gonna go ahead and just skip these. All right, Bowmasters it is, and I think Azusa is what we target. That way they don't put any extra lands down. They probably should have. Actually, they may not have had extra lands to put down. Okay, here we go. Another amulet. Are you going to be able to give it haste? I would not be I would not be sad at all if Amulet of Vigor ever got banned. really, I really hate playing against this deck. I'm just gonna yield until block step. I don't know if this helps, honestly, because I don't know how double strike and trample works. This was ridiculous.